Everybody, welcome to another episode of Digital Exchange. And who I have made a phenomenal person. He's walked into an organization where the tech stack was built by committee, marketing picks one tool, HR chooses another, and nobody talked to each other. His job is to bring order to the chaos, and he does it without a full-time seat at anyone's table. George Rees is a fractional CIO and IT consultant with Church Consulting, where he serves nonprofits and member-based associations that are finally, in many cases, doing the IT work they should have done years ago. George, welcome to the Digital Exchange.
Wayne, great to be here. Those are some great insights that you've got there, and I can't wait to discuss some of them because you couldn't be more accurate in your assessment.
And I appreciate you coming on board. I really think you have a lot of insight and feedback, especially you being a virtual CIO. You have the benefit of being exposed to multiple different organizations. And I think having that dialogue and conversation really be good. So sure. Let me ask you, George, you're sitting at a table of 5 or 6 organizations at the same time. What does that vantage point teach you about how mid-sized companies actually make technology decisions versus how they may make them on their own?
No, that's a very good question. And it all starts with, they are all starting from the same place of doing the right thing. I do primarily with nonprofit organizations. And they are really all, when they make their decisions with all the knowledge they have in front of them, which is great, although they don't have the entire span of knowledge they need. And what they do is they're working with the head of marketing who's looking for an email automation platform. And they pick the best one for marketing. And they don't have that cross the organization view. When they look at other types of infrastructure choices, it's the same thing. It's you know what? Joe has experience with Dropbox. Why don't we just use Dropbox to share our files? Okay, let's just do it. And then they're all in. And then within 6 months, they've now got a Dropbox solution in there without considering the fact they might already have that functionality with their SharePoint licenses. A lot of it also comes down to the fact that without having somebody in that seat to evangelize and to do the internal training, the people within the organization that would really blossom don't have that opportunity to blossom. So they don't find out that there are these solutions already in-house that are capable. And one of the things I see is that you've got these organizations do the right thing. They bring in a managed service provider to provide their IT services, but they don't have the right person in the organization talking to the MSP. So it's kind of like, oh, we just use them for help desk services. And I'm like, but no, they can do so much more. They're your trusted IT partner. Are you having quarterly sessions with them to find out what they can be doing? So they have the best intentions, but the problem I've always found with these type of organizations is someone in the organization must have as part of their job description IT responsibility. And when it's not part of their job description and it's just something that they took on or something that they have to do because they're CFO, IT priorities are not being considered. Organization-wide IT priorities not being considered. It's all at a department level.
So what I hear, and tell me if this is correct, and this is what I've seen, and I actually talk about this all the time, is I think there's a lot of information, but just not a lot of clarity.
Sure. There is that. And I think, let me build on that. So the clarity is, as an IT professional, we have all this information and we understand it and we know what to do with it. The CFO doesn't. They understand risk, but they don't understand fully the impact of that risk or how to mitigate it. So they're managing. They tend to oversimplify to the point of risk versus dollar, where there's other pieces to it. Like when we put in a new system, not only are you getting the new system with the latest patches applied to it, it's already taking you beyond the obsolescence date. You go to Windows 11, so now we're in a much better shape because we've got patches coming in. we're on the latest version, we've got full support from Microsoft. But to them, they're only looking at the fact that I might have to pay somebody to come in and make sure that all our machines are up to date. They don't comprehend everything that's behind some of these upgrades that we do.
So let me ask you, when you come in and take over IT leadership, what are some of the things the leadership itself thought they'd never have to think about? And let me back up and explain what I mean. A lot of times the leadership ignore things that they truly should be involved with. What are some of the things that when you take over IT leadership, you say, hey, guys, you can't really not ignore that because that affects productivity, that affects efficiency, that affects the overall culture and the environment. What are some of the things that you have to line them into to make them say, hey, get involved. This is part of what it starts from the top and bring it down. It's not about licenses. It's not about OneDrive. It's not about Teams. It's not even truly about Microsoft, even though Microsoft is one of the biggest vendors out there. My pitch, Microsoft is in 85% of companies have Microsoft resources. But how do you know, are you getting your value from that? And what are the things that you have to align leadership into? No, you need to be involved.
So Wayne, it's funny you ask that because I've got this slide that I put on every one of my introduction kickoff meetings I have. And the slide is basically, you can't outsource ownership. And what happens is these organizations, and they all mean well, they bring in an MSP and they say, now I've got all my IT settled. I'm good. We're fine. And what they don't realize with that is that that's like you hire a very competent, a very exceptional employee, but you need to listen to them. You need to take their guidance with you. And more importantly, you need to understand their guidance. And this is why organizations are multi-tiered. The CFO cannot necessarily understand what your cost accountant is saying. And you've got people in between them, whether it's the controller or somebody like that, who can funnel that information up in a way that makes sense to the appropriate area. Now, what's happening in a lot of these organizations is the MSP and service providers got this information and they provide it back to the organization. And the organization says, hey, thanks. I expect to read your next quarterly report. And then they file it away, or they just put it in their little folder called MSP and their Outlook, and then nothing happens with it. And what I've found is that, you can outsource the work, but you can't outsource the ownership. So what that means is somebody in the organization has to understand it. And getting that work, one of the steps they do is they bring in someone like me to be the fractional CIO. And my job is then, how can I take what the MSP is saying and make it into digestible nuggets and tactical action items that they can now handle within that organization? Okay.
And you hit on something that's very important. It's not that they ignore whether they MSP or their internal IT department. It's the fact that, and correct me if I'm wrong, what I'm hearing is the information is given to them, but it's not given them the way where they can digest it or even relate to it. So they take it and file it away. So I think leadership is not necessarily that they don't want to be engaged, but nobody's talking to them in the language that they understand and care about. Is that correct?
Exactly. You nailed it right there. And that's a long-standing problem. Technologists tend to get frustrated if people don't speak our language, and we've kind of got to dial it back. The beauty in technology is the ability to take this really complicated thing that we do, in some cases, and try and make it as simple as possible. I always say that if you need a metaphor, come see me. I can take any IT problem and compare it to building a house, running a car, or anything along those lines that I can then take and explain these things to my boards or to my executive team. I talk all the time about the IT basically being a house, and everything you see in Microsoft and your hardware, That's your plumbing. That's your foundation. That's your basement. Okay. You don't go down there very often, but it's there and it needs to work, because if it doesn't, it doesn't. Then you've got your application layer, and your core Microsoft apps are your kitchen. And then you've got your enterprise ERP system, which is your hallway network. But I always have to think in metaphors, because they don't want to ignore IT, but it's very easy. If there's things going on in my life that I don't understand, I tend to ignore it. It's like, you know what? Sometimes, the doctor says something to you and you're like, okay, and you didn't really get it, so you let it go until all of a sudden, you've got a problem. And that's what IT is in this case. There's a metaphor, by the way.
Yes. And I like that metaphor. It's almost like my wife, my home. The plumbing is necessary, but to her, it's not important. How she feels about the house, is the decoration the right way, is the lighting the right way, is the kitchen nice. How it feels is what's important to her.
Yes.
But the plumbing and the running water is necessary. IT is necessary, but the lead. So to walk me through that.
And Wayne, on top of that, there's also the visibility. Not only is it necessary, it's not visible. So your wife, who never goes down to the basement, doesn't see the rusty pipes, doesn't see the fact that your Windows server is now 7 years and out of warranty. She doesn't see that. All she sees is that everything's working all fine up here because my Wi-Fi is working and my drapes are beautiful.
Yep. But when I talk about the plumbing, her eyes glaze over. But if I tell her how, remember the dishes that you want to wash and how nice it's going to look? She go, okay, that I understand. So let's talk from the leadership side, non-technical. From your experience, what is and you said board, which is also very important, from the board's perspective, and then also if you can share if it is different, what does the board care about and what does leadership care about? Because that's paramount to now translating. Because they don't care about tech. They care about something else.
A lot of the boards I work with are in the nonprofit space. So the boards there, and I think we've had a side discussion on this in the past, Wayne. A lot of it comes down to not necessarily dollars and cents in the nonprofit world, but it really comes down to reputation and reputational risk. And what they are really concerned about is anything that's going to, in my world, reflect poorly on them to their membership, to their stakeholders, or anybody, their customers, essentially, anybody who's going to think of them in a negative light. So they worry about that. They focus on that. And that's a lot of the ways how when I'm presenting to my executive team, I try and think not like the executive team, but I try and think of what does the board want to hear. So I'm kind of like jumping a step, figuring out how would I educate that board through the executive team so that the executive team can carry the message forward. Because in the same way I'm simplifying it for the board has to simplify it even more I'm simplifying it for the executive team. The executive team then has to simplify it for the board. So, it's a classic game of telephone where we've got to basically not lose the signal while the signal gets smaller as we go. So we have to kind of make sure that message is refined each time and we don't lose the heart of the message as we simplify.
So one of the biggest challenges is really communicating in a language that the C-suite and the board can understand, and moving it away from the conversation, moving away from the IT department, because most things out there focus on conversation of convincing IT of why you should do this, but doesn't clearly align CIOs, CFOs, boards, and COOs on why this thing matters. So there's a disconnect because they hear different things, because they also value different things. And me saying, hey, for a technical example, we need teams. A CIO, CFO, what does that mean to me in my operational? What does that mean to me in my bottom line, resource allocation, profitability, and efficiency? CIO is going, hey, what does that mean to me in my compliance? Because I am the guy that's going to say, hey, are we meeting our fiduciary requirements? So when I come to the board, because I have to take, CIO speaks to the executives to tell, you just said it, translate to the board of how safe they're functioning, especially in nonprofit. Nonprofit is reputation. How are we protecting our reputation so we continuously get donation for our nonprofit? And CIO needs to relay that back up in a way the executive board can now translate that to the board. So CIO cares about compliance and regulation, and not deep dive, not tools, but overall, hey, am I doing something to make sure we're doing best practice for the organization? That's missed in the stack a lot of times because most things speak from the IT level. And data points all talking from
Yes.
IT level never translates up.
You're absolutely right. And that's where it also helps if you can tie your projects to a business initiative. You know, I can't tell you how many you see Project 2030, where we're looking to make sure that we are able to deliver all this great stuff by 2030. And then we've got a platform to rest it on, which is ancient, where we have a platform that's not flexible enough. You see that all the time. You want to do AI this, AI that. AI, it used to be we need to have an app for this, we need to have an app for that. And it's just like, that's the buzzword. But what they don't understand is what has to happen underneath to make those buzzwords happen. And a lot of the times we as IT professionals miss the boat as far as that educational opportunity, that when these buzzwords get out there, that we start educating based upon that. So like, okay, yeah, we can do this investment in AI, but you know what? Let's make sure our laptops that we're now nearing 6 years old can power Claude Cowork on them, because that's going to be resource intensive on your machines. So we're going to need to start thinking about that. So if you're really doing this initiative for AI at the desktop over the next year, we need to start making the investment now before we start moving forward.
So you brought up a good thing about AI. And before we go deep into that, I know you and I have this conversation, but I'll throw back at you. Have you seen a large shift into the Microsoft stack? And when did you see the shift happening? I know from my perspective what I see, but in nonprofits, have you seen a large investment in the Microsoft stack where they're shifting towards consolidating, centering around Microsoft? When did you start to see, what do you think is the catalyst for that shift? And where do you think that's going and how that now affects choices that leadership have to make?
Well, I'll be honest with you, and I don't think I shared this with you before. I've been in the nonprofit, primarily the professional organization space for about 15, 16 years now. And when I came in, I saw a lot more of the Google suite than I do now. And at the time, nonprofit and anybody who was in that area loved working in the Google suite, primarily because of the cost structure. But what happened is over time, besides Microsoft being more competitive with nonprofit pricing, organizations started to realize interoperability and the ability to share beyond and the ability to control, and especially the ability to manage things centrally. Microsoft had it hands down, so that you have individuals being able to share out anything they wanted to anybody. And then you ran into issues of when you started talking to your volunteers and your board people that were not part of your internal organization. Their firewalls weren't tolerating this Wild West that the Google suites were at the time. So you started to see people come back to Microsoft, and that worked out really well with the ecosystem of these MSPs out there to help us support that, which has been wonderful. So now that you didn't have to have your own IT person in-house, one of the beauties of the Google suite is you can just have your most technical person running the show. And God forbid you had to actually have an Outlook server on your site. So now that Microsoft is in the cloud and you've got these MSP services, there was really no reason for a lot of people to stay with the Google cloud anymore, Google suite. Now, the next thing, and then I think I mentioned this the other day in a conversation, is that Microsoft may not get things right the first time, but they will get it right. It's just a matter of time.
Yes.
You see this with AI. I mean, Copilot is not the trendsetter leader in the AI space, but I wouldn't sell it short. But what is really, really pushing the envelope now are things like Claude Cowork, which does, in my mind, what Copilot should do as far as functionality. Now, I don't think Microsoft will be down for long, but it's just a matter of time where they're starting to do the same things that Claude Cowork does. And that's really, in my mind, what is now pushing a lot of the AI investment in the nonprofit space, where you can actually work with the Microsoft. And funny thing is it's actually helping even more push the Microsoft environment, because it works so well with the Microsoft environment. So it talks great to your SharePoint environment and even your Outlook piece. But I digress. Sorry, Wayne.
No, you're spot on with that, and it goes back to building. We're living more and more in a Microsoft stack environment, whether we like it or not, because they're making all the data available. So more things are going to want to consume data out of Microsoft. Most people are using, like I said, over 85% of the market in the US companies are Microsoft. Over 90% is government. Where's the data going to lie? Word, Excel, PowerPoint, OneDrive, SharePoint. What does AI require to actually do what it needs to do? Data. So where's the data? Within Microsoft tenant.
And Wayne, let me build on that, because you're 100% correct. And to build on that, it's not just the data, but it's the security model. I don't have to move that security model to the AI system, because the AI system is feeding off the Microsoft security model. So if George doesn't have access to this file and Wayne does, when I connect my AI to it, I can't see Wayne's file. I don't need to know about Wayne's file, because it will know, because it's reading that Microsoft security, platform. So it is so advantageous that you don't have to build another layer into your AI and have another administrator administering your AI security piece, where it was headed for a bit with some of these cloud-based AI solutions before Cowork, where you had to move your files into a new environment, and when you put them out there into the cloud within the AI, within the auspices of AI, to have it managed. I'm like, no, now I've got a whole new area to manage. But now they've done their integrations with Microsoft, and reinforces the value of the Microsoft security model, because I don't need to do it, and I can now not have to have a Claude security manager or a GPT security manager. They just will connect, and I can just use my MSP, who I know and trust, to continue to manage our environment.
But here's one of the gaps that I see that's coming out of this consolidation and the greater exposure to the stack. And whether it's Microsoft or any other technology, one of the challenges that I feel CIOs have, I know I've had in my own roles when I'm a CIO, okay, is actually now understanding, with all this stuff, we're in a world where we're continuously using multiple different things. Okay, and Microsoft increased their rates. Everybody across the board, these cloud applications, the price of ownership is going up and up. Can I now validate my productivity and efficiency based on my financial investment in these platforms? And that's becoming more difficult to justify. On an operational side, hey, am I getting a return on productivity if I'm a CIO, COO? On the CFO is, hey, is this thing worth investing in? And on the CIO is, are we making the best choices of what we're actually using? Do I have the right license tier? Am I applying, I'm over provisioning or under provisioning person for what they really need for their roles? I think that's one of the things, is the visibility to be able, not on a technical side, on an operational side, to see, hey, am I really getting the most out of my investment? Do you see that also being a challenge?
It's both a challenge and an opportunity, because from our perspective in IT, we've got total visibility, total understanding to the cost structure, the licenses, the overage costs as we get to usage. But Where we struggle on ROI is the return. How much are we bringing it back? And then that's the challenge you speak of, Wayne. But what that is, it's an opportunity to get with the business, and it's an ability to have that conversation. We've introduced this to you. I view it as a chance to, well, I'm going to digress 1 second. IT's always had a marketing problem in the organization. We're like the referees. We only get noticed when we screw up or when something fails. But the 99% of the right calls we make aren't visible. But this is that opportunity to go out to the business and say, hey, I want to talk to you about the effectiveness of our AI system. How is that working for you? How is that making a difference to you? And that gives us an opportunity to move out of the IT space and into the business and have that conversation. Let's talk about your return, because what I'd like to do is I'd like to continue this. I'd like to expand this from a pilot to give this to more seats in your organization. And then you have the conversation of, who will benefit, where to see the benefit. So, yes, it's a challenge, but it's also an opportunity to have that conversation. And in many ways, you can get your business friends, your business associates to help you build that return for you, because we just don't have access to that. And it's a chance to move beyond just talking to the finance group to just say, I need a dollar amount. But what you can also do is when you go and say, look, we don't need to hire at this point. That doesn't show up in your conversation with the CFO. But the fact that marketing doesn't need to hire a copywriter, or marketing now needs to do something else, you get that when you have that conversation externally with the business.
Yep. And I think IT is going to have to cross that gap where they have to be able to translate what they have. And it's not easy. No platform out there makes it easy to really translate from the data that's there to a really operational conversation. Mm-hmm. So as you as a CEO, you now list the IT, taking that information from them. And now how can I translate that up into executive? Kind of falling back to what we talked before of now, years ago, IT will say anything, people will believe it. Okay, the drawback, and I think the biggest thing that changed that was the internet. People can go in and Google, hey, I want Adobe. What does it take to do it? I don't need IT. I don't need their approval. And IT, you're telling me this, but I can download this and I can in 2 seconds Google and get my answer. May not be the right answer because I'm not thinking about security. I'm not thinking about long-term. I'm thinking short-term satisfaction, not long-term satisfaction. So that's forced us to change our model of how, instead of dictating, we have to convince now. That's truthfully what I remember years ago. IT would dictate. The minute you say this, you were like the wizard behind the curtain. Whatever you say goes. Now you're negotiating. Okay. What's that? I don't negotiate with terrorists. We have to negotiate with terrorists. Okay.
AI, because they're not Googling. Now they're going to AI and saying, look, I need a solution for faxing. Mm-hmm. And because we don't have a fax machine anymore. All right. And there's reasons why we don't have fax machines. We never use them. And they go there and they get the 5 biggest vendors with pricing, and they get all this information. They go to procurement, get a little P card, they sign up for a service, and we don't even know about it. So it's gotten a lot worse in the world of AI with shadow IT, and shadow IT is real, and it's something we have to do. But that also goes back to evangelizing and the education and the marketing that we have to do. We need to be out there. We need to have a service mentality that says, don't go to AI, come to us.
Mm-hmm. And that will only happen if we change the way we communicate. The reason why AI works with people is because AI will give them the information in the way that they ask for.
Right.
Okay. If we change the way we communicate down the chain and up the chain, they'll come to us because we'll come and give them the information the way they want. This is all language. This is all communication and perspective of sharing what you have.
Yes, no, you're absolutely right. It comes down to communication. It's the real skill in all of this as you move forward with technology, as more and more gets automated, is not how do we talk with the machines, but how do we talk with the people, and how do we put these terms that we get. I mean, if you've been to any of the AI prompting classes or anything, they start talking about how the whole world of information you have to include in your prompt. But too many of these people go in with their AI and their prompt, and it's basically based on their needs, their organization needs, and we need to reinforce that in all our communication. That the service that we can provide to people by taking into account the whole organization. And I usually lead with price. It's like, hey, look, what if we got an enterprise license and I can save your department more for everybody? And that gets their attention. So, there's a little bit of a salesman, or at least a marketing person perspective that we have to have as we lead IT organizations.
Yep, and I agree with you completely. But George, I'm going to shift gears because I don't want anybody to think you're just about operations and about tech. I want them to know about you as a human being. And you and I have went through this before, but I know everybody can see it. We see that big comic book collection behind you. Tell us all about that. What's that all about?
Well, in May of 1974, I my first comic book, Flash.
Your mic is going in and out.
I'm sorry, I've got some barking dogs in the background. The beauty of doing our job nowadays. But in May of 1974, I bought the copy of The Flash from the newsstand for a whopping 20 cents. And that taught me to read. And being more of a tech guy, when the ability to read and get immersed into science fiction and going from DC to Marvel. I've stayed with that hobby for the years. And as you can see behind me are a collection of novels that I've been using throughout, that I use as my inspiration. So if I ever have a bad day, I just look behind me and I think of these fictional characters that have struggled through the day to get the job done.
So you're your own superhero.
I may not be a superhero, but it's something we should aspire to do. It's absolutely something we can do. We will fail to always do the right thing, but we should always be trying to do the right thing.
Yeah, have you ever went to Comic-Con?
I have not done San Diego Comic-Con, but I've actually done the Comic-Con cruise twice, which was a wonderful experience. I didn't know there's a cruise, which is kind of ironic because paper and water don't mix. But it's been a lot of fun. But no, it's a great experience. I got to meet several creators, pick up some custom artwork, and it's just a real fun hobby. And everybody finds their own thing they gravitate to. Everybody's their own favorite character, their own favorite creators, and it's a very inclusive community. Inclusive community.
No, it's great. You and I had a conversation. I have my little crate downstairs of comic books. I haven't opened up in a while. I have to do it. Go back and crack it back open. But do you have any other hobbies or any other interests that you'd like to share?
Well, I probably have way too many hobbies, which is one of my main failings. But I'm actually very involved in my university as an alumnus. I've actually served as the president of the Alumni Association of Rutgers, and then went on to serve on their board of trustees, where I'm now an emeritus member. So I'm very involved in higher education from that perspective. I try and stay in touch. Which I think helps from an IT perspective as you start looking at the direction of the way things are going. What are we teaching people? Where's instruction going, and where is education going? In the same way as where's our technology going? They marry themselves well together. So that's one of my bigger hobbies. Then of course there's always music. Every technical person loves their music. I wish I played music better, but I love to do my karaoke, and I love my 80s music. And Yacht Rock. Gotta be in the Yacht Rock.
You gotta be in which? Yacht Rock. I don't know that. What's that?
Yacht Rock is what we like to say is it's highs in the mid 80s with lows in the 70s. What that means is it's your soft rock. From about 1976 to about 1982.
Okay.
Think of Ambrosia, Christopher Cross, Toto, Steely Dan. That's what you're thinking of.
Okay.
But it's smooth.
I can go with that. I can go with the
Yep.
smooth rock. I can work with that. I can work with that.
George Benson. Yep. They're all really fun music. But no, I can find fun wherever I am. That's my role in life. So
And that's a great trait, and that's why I wanted you on. You're a great person to speak to. This was phenomenal. I really appreciate you being on the Digital Exchange and having this dialogue and conversation. And thank you very much.
you're very welcome. Great talking to you, Wayne. Let's stay in touch.
All right, definitely. Take care. Oh, by the way, before I get off, if there's any shout outs you want to make before we jump off?
I'd like to tell you one. This is not a paid commercial activity, but I work for a firm that I love, and you can tell I'm a fun person, and that's because my job lets me do that. So I'd love to tell you, A Church Consulting is a great place if you are in the nonprofit space, specifically membership-based associations. You need help with anything, give us a ring. It's achurchconsulting.com. But I'll just tell you, we've got a fantastic community in the nonprofit space. So if you're interested in pursuing a career, reach out to me. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Love to talk to people.
And George, if somebody wants to reach out to you about A Church Consulting and maybe use your services, should they connect with you on LinkedIn, or do you want to share an email?
You can do it via LinkedIn, or this is a tough email, so everybody get your pens out. It's george@achurchconsulting.com. So, and that's A Church like you're going to a church, but that's named after our founder and overall great person, CEO of Rebecca A Church, who's kind of a icon in the association technology space.
Excellent. Thank you, George. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.